Hello guys, welcome back to the channel and welcome back to another warranty video, which I'm sure you all like. Going by the last couple we've done, you seem to like them, but yeah, I thought I'd do a video this time because we've got an absolute beauty of a claim, I suppose. You're probably wondering why I've got a crankshaft on my desk, but I'll explain that in a moment. So, just run through the beginning of this claim and where it's all come from and how it's come about. Just before I was off work with COVID, we had a customer contact us, wanted an engine done of a particular type. I'm not going to mention obviously the customer, not going to give any details out like that. I'm also not going to give out details of what engine it was. The only reason we got involved in this particular engine is because it was a good friend of a good customer of ours. So he gets in touch with me, this gent, very nice, very pleasant, said that he got the only thing I will say at this point is it's a diesel engine. He said that he got a potential piston issue in the engine. How much for a reconditioned engine? I said, well, you've got two options here. Firstly, because it's like a modern diesel engine, first thing I'll do is get a price on a recon, an exchange engine for yourselves. He said, well, depending on the price, if it's similar, he said, I'd rather keep my own engine and get that done by yourselves. I said, well, that's fair enough. So I give him the prices. He was, as they all are, and this is one reason why we sort of focus more on the classic and the performance stuff as opposed to the general repairs and the recondition units, because people don't want it to cost them a penny, let alone what it actually does end up costing. The difference with the performance and the classic stuff is generally people are out to spend a few quid on it. They want it to be nice, and they're fully aware of how much things cost, because 9 times out of 10 they're not just doing the engine at the time, they're doing the rest of the car as well. So that's one reason why we sort of steer clear of that particular engine. Anyway, give the guy the prices for an exchange and also to do his unit, similar sort of money. We had various chats on what I recommend he do. One of which I said, what I'm expecting to find is you've either got a wiped piston, sort of melted the piston and caused either bore damage, or that's what, you're losing compression that way, or it's going to be a cracked piston due to a dodgy injector, a failed injector. So I said, you just got to bear in mind at this point, it's not just the engine that we're repairing. You've got to bear in mind what the cause of this is, because very rarely these days do modern engines just give up because of how tired they've got. It's generally or usually down to something external to the engine. So either on the injector side, the fuel side, or the exhaust side, the turbos, something like that. So I said, buy a new set of injectors. Financially, there's not that much difference between reconditioned injectors and new injectors on a lot of these engines. And by the time you've got your injectors tested and added that onto the bill, you're almost there. So just go and buy a new set of injectors. They're probably going to be a couple of £100 each. That's what he agreed to do. Everything was hunky-dory. Then, obviously, I was away not very well, left the job, which turned up to my colleagues. They reconditioned it for him. So just before I came back, the engine was done. The gentleman came and picked the engine up, and my colleague or business partner, John, said, bearing in mind John's been in this game for nearly 50 years, he said, I have a bad feeling about this chap. I don't think we're going to hear the end of him at all. He did actually, while I was away, he bought his own injectors in to be tested when I advised him not to bother. 3 of which were knackered anyway. 1 was proper knackered, which was the problem. He had 1 injector did fail, I think it was number 4, and it did actually crack a piston right the way across, damaged the bore, and that was the reason for his problems. So he moaned about the price of that, not sure whether he was expecting it to be free to test them or what. But then he asked John if he can get a price on reconditioned injectors. Again, gone against my advice. John gave him a price, moaned because he said he can get them for £20 each less or something like that. Moaned about a couple of things to do with the engine. Moaned that we give, because when he bought the engine in, we normally ask, obviously, if you get an exchange engine, it's a completely bare unit with everything off it, and that's how you bring it in, that's how you get it back. He's bought everything on it. He's bought the fuel pump that goes back on the back of the cylinder head, that's on it. Pipe works on it, the flywheel and everything is on it. So we sort of give him that back in a box, and yeah, had a bit of a moan about that. I come back from my time off and I get a phone call off the guy. So up until now, John's correct. He said he wasn't happy with the engine, wasn't happy with the cleanliness of the engine, although, as I say, anyone that's had engines off us know what they're like. Said that the inside the ports were not as nice and shiny as he would have liked them. Every engine that myself and the chaps produce are, you know, as I say, anyone that's had an engine will know how clean the engines are, and we paint them up, etc. So anyway, wasn't going to argue there. I said, look, we'll come and collect the engine from almost 50 miles away, bring it back and do it to the standard that you think is acceptable. So Carlos went and picked it up. We took all the timing gear off it, took the cylinder head off again, stripped all the valves out and the valve gear, soda blasted it all again. So we put it all back together, obviously with new gaskets and stuff like that, and sent it back to him. Anyway, thought that was going to be the end of it. Sure enough, getting on 2 weeks later now, he's doing the job himself as well, mind. It's not a garage doing it for him, although he did get a quote off the garage that is a friend of his that we do work for, as I said at the beginning. He got a quote off them, didn't want to do that. Of course, he used to do this sort of thing, so he'll put the engine in himself. As I say, 2 weeks on, we get a phone call. First thing he says, really not happy with this, with the engine at all. He said, I've got a severe oil leak from the rear main seal. I said, oh dear. When you say severe oil leak, how severe? He said, well, it's absolutely pouring out. I said, that is unusual. I said, because usually even if they leak, even if it's a bad leak from the rear seal, it would be a drip, or a, you know, not even a continuous drip, just a bad drip, and that's all it needs to be. I said, how long have you run the engine for? He said, well, I haven't run it. I said, well, how have you got an oil leak then? He said, well, it's not even in the car yet. I thought, right, okay. So the engine's out, yeah, it's still on a crane. He said basically when it's tilted backwards, it's absolutely pouring out of the bolt hole, the flywheel bolt hole. And I said, hang on a minute, I'm just trying to picture this, and that's why I've got this crank here. So this isn't a crank out of the engine that we're talking about, but this is a crank of the similar sort of type. We've got, if you can see that, these are the flywheel bolt holes, and they go straight through. There's a through hole, it's not a blanked hole. So on the engine that we're talking about, the bolts come from the factory, new bolts. You have to fit new bolts every time. They come with like a Loctite sealant on there. So the bolts have to be in, otherwise oil will leak out of these holes. So I said to him, you need to take the flywheel off to have a look to see if it's leaking from the rear seal. He said, well, you know, at this stage it's just pouring out oil, and I'm thinking about taking legal advice, to be honest. And I said, well, just steady on. I said, can you see where it's leaking out of the rear seal? No. I said, well, in fairness to us, at this point, you've rang us up, threatening us with legal advice, and you're not even sure whether it is the rear seal or anything that we've done. I said it could be, if it's tilted backwards and full of oil, I don't know why he's filled it with oil before he's put it in the vehicle, but if it's tilted back, I said it could be tracking down the engine from anywhere really. You need to take the flywheel off and the clutch and have a look, see where it's coming from. I said, do us a favour, do that, send me some photos. So he sent me some photos via email, and all he really sent photos of, to be honest, was the the back of the engine with this flywheel and the clutch still on, just sending me photos of the bolts. Couldn't really see. Oh, he sent one of the inside of the bell housing with some oil on it, and also some of his yard floor with a load of oil on. So I emailed him back. I said, look, I can't really see a lot from that. I can't see where it's come from. You need to take off the flywheel. I'll send you a video. So he sent 5 videos, 4 of which were oil absolutely peeing out of one of the bolt holes that he had removed a bolt from. So the oil is pouring straight out, obviously because it's on a slope, it's pouring out of the sump, through the bolt hole he's removed the bolt hole, down the front of the clutch and the flywheel and onto his yard floor. The 5th video showed him of removing all the bolts, taking the flywheel off, and then persists in saying, there we go, there's oil absolutely piddling out the back of this engine all over the yard floor. By now he's got all of the bolts out, so you can imagine it. I rang him up, I said, look, I'm not being funny, but let me just educate you on how this works. I said, these are through holes, the bolts need to be in and sealed to be oil tight. All you've showed me evidence of is oil pouring out of these bolt holes. I said, on the 5th video you sent was the only one where I could actually see the seal once you pulled the flywheel off, and the seal inside and outside was dry as a bone. So your problem is you've took one of the bolts out and there's oil peeing out of it. Wouldn't have it. Would not have it. He said, I've been fitting engines and what have you for years. He said, I've got my friend here who's a mechanic, and to be honest with you, I think this is just a case of substandard work. I did have a little giggle. He said, I can't believe your attitude. I said, I haven't got an attitude. I said, I'm really sorry, but I just find it mind-boggling that you're just not listening to my advice and what I'm telling you. I said, there is no evidence of that seal leaking at all. There's no oil around it. All you've shown me is oil peeing out of a bolt hole that you've removed. There doesn't appear to be a warranty issue here. He said, well, I think your attitude's appalling and the way you're dealing with this is just awful. Your workmanship is substandard. You will be hearing from my solicitor. So I said, well, we don't seem to be getting anywhere on the phone with you. So if that's the way you feel, sir, I do apologise, and I think you're going to have to go the route that you think's best. So who knows? Who knows where it's going? I did actually email him back today, just stating what I said on the phone and what is evident to me. Yeah, mind-boggling, really, to be honest. I don't know what you guys think about it. Feel free to comment below. Maybe I'm missing something that you guys can see. Feel free to tell me. You know what I'm like. Any advice is welcome. Very strange one, this. It just feels a little bit to me like, as I advised him at the beginning, he's not just got the engine done, which is obviously a fair amount of money, but as he's gone on, you get things breaking. He's had the injectors, he's had this go, he's had things sort of costing him along the way. He's got to a point where he's had enough of it. He's struggling with putting the engine in and the things all around it, because you're talking a 10-12 year old van here that's done probably 160,000 miles. Things are going to need replacing once you've disturbed them. So just seems a little bit to me like he's had enough of it and he wants to recoup some money. But as I say, we shall see what happens with that. But yeah, very odd one. Just thought I'd share that with you. Remember to like, hit that notification bell if you will, and please subscribe, guys. Really appreciate you watching. Let me know in the comments below what you think about this, and I'll see you in another video. Thanks very much.